I'm going to start by removing these little caps here with a little pocket screwdriver. Pop it up, and you'll see a 15mm nut underneath. Go ahead and remove that. All right, and at this point, you can grab the wiper arm, kind of push it up and down like this. That'll break it free from this stud. Remove it from the wiper transmission, set it aside, and let's do the same to the other wiper arm. So pop the cap up, remove the nut. 7mm bolts all the way across, remove them. At this point, you'll see these little push clips all along. You want to pop those out. They hold the wiring harness in place. So if you just squeeze on both sides, you'll see they have two little tabs that lock it in. So just squeeze them, press them through. There we go. The wiring harness is free. One last thing is the windshield washer hose. Now the windshield washer hose can stay connected, and I'm just going to move this out of the way like that and set it aside over here, and we can access our wiper transmission. Let's unplug this, press the locking tab, which is on the bottom, and then with a 10mm remove all three bolts that are holding this wiper transmission on. There's one, another one back here, and one last one over here. Okay. Now slide this up and out. And now we have to disconnect the motor from the transmission so we can swap this over to the new one. So I have the old wiper transmission with the motor on my workbench as well as the new one, and I position them in approximately the same positioning here. You don't want the arms to be facing backwards or anything like that, so just try to get it close. And if you flip this over, let's do it this way so you can see it. If you flip this over, you'll see the nut that holds the shaft of the motor onto the wiper transmission. So with a 12mm, let's remove that. There we go, set that aside, and then 3 10mm bolts will get the motor off. Okay, last one. This might be a little bit stuck in there, so we'll grab a little hammer and tap it off. Perfect. Now you can remove the motor. So I like to transfer these right away. That way the orientation doesn't get all messed up. So let's put the 3 10mm bolts in first. That way the motor is secured. Snug them up. And now try to line up the wiper transmission as best as you can. I can adjust this later once it's in the car. I'll show you exactly how to find out if it needs to be adjusted, but for now I remember that the nut was just barely covered by this arm, so I couldn't get a socket on. I could only get a wrench on it, so it was almost kind of in this position right here. We'll snug it up, test it in the car, and if it needs to be adjusted, like I said, I'll show you how to find out if it does need adjustment. So make sure this is nice and snug so that it catches on to the splines. This shaft of the motor has some splines on it that bite into this plate here. That's how it connects. So let's get this in the vehicle and test it. Let's plug this in. At this point, I'm going to set it down here, not bolt it on. I want to activate the wiper motor. And what I'm looking for is I'm going to look closely at either one of these studs that control the wiper arms. And when I activate the wiper motor, I want this to spin clockwise and then counterclockwise and stop. If this starts by spinning counterclockwise, then clockwise, then counterclockwise again to go back down, pretend the wiper arm is on it, that means the wiper transmission is not properly bolted onto the motor, and as the motor is spinning, it's actually offset, so the wiper transmission still wants to go down and then back up and then back down, so it's going to be all out of adjustment. So what I'm looking for right now when I activate it is, like I said, immediately, right off the bat, it needs to start spinning clockwise and not even a little bit counterclockwise. All right, let's see what happens. Okay, so I don't know if you can notice, but it actually is just barely spinning counterclockwise a little bit before it activates. All right, so you'll notice that just hesitation right at the beginning where it kind of goes counterclockwise. So in order to fix that, let me show you what you have to do. So I have this wiper transmission with the motor back on my workbench. I'm going to loosen up this nut. And in order to adjust what you saw there, where it actually goes slightly counterclockwise, we actually have to straighten out this arm and plate combination just a little bit. So I brought it about one notch over on the splines. We'll snug it back up, give it another test, and see where it's at. Do that part. So this looks better, but it's still not perfect. Let's go one more notch, and I think that's going to be spot on right where we need it to be. The reason you want to do this is because if you leave it the way it is and it actually goes down just a little bit, it might not look like much on this shaft, but it has the whole wiper arm and wiper blade attached to it. So a little bit here ends up resulting in a lot of movement at the end of the wiper blade. So you definitely want to get this clocked properly, adjusted the right way. Okay, so I adjusted it one more notch on the spline. So like these splines that you see here, the shaft of the motor has the same thing. So I just went over one more spline, and I think that's perfect right there. So let's turn off the ignition and bolt the wiper transmission back up. Put back the three 10mm bolts that held the wiper transmission in place. There we go. Make sure the bolt holes line up properly. Let's snug these up. Whoa. Let's get the cowl back. Let's get this cowl back in place. And before you fully reinstall it, don't forget about this wiring harness that was attached here. Push all the push clips back. This was holding onto here, and this gets pressed onto here, and then just go down the line and re-secure this so it's not hanging down. You don't want this to get caught on anything while the vehicle's running. Okay, and the wiper, the washer fluid hose gets snapped back into that little spot there. Make sure everything is lined up so that you can put your bolts back in and secure this down. It has this rubber piece here that has to meet up with this one. Same on the other side, so let's get this one back in place. There we go. Now everything's lined up. Let's get the 4 bolts back. Let's put back these screws that secure the cowl. Okay, let's snug these up. Now let's put the wiper arms on. Try to position it approximately where it was before. My windshield was very dirty, so I can kind of just gauge where it was based on the dirt. So grab your mounting nut here, start it on, snug it up. And then once they're both on, we'll make sure that they're actually where they're supposed to be by testing them out. So before I put the caps on, I'm going to install both of them. That way I don't have to remove the caps in case I have to adjust. Right about there. Start on the nut, snug it up. Okay, now let's give them a test. Okay, wiper arms are installed and tightened down. Let's test them out. Okay, so as you can see, there's a slight hesitation. It still wants to kind of go down just a tiny bit. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to take this back off and readjust the wiper transmission. And this is what I was talking about. A little bit of movement on these shafts will make a whole lot of movement on the end of the wiper blade just because of this whole wiper arm. It has a lot of leverage. So I'm going to have to take it all back apart, unfortunately, readjust the wiper transmission, and then put it all back together. Okay, so I adjusted it. Everything is perfect. Let's put the caps back on. And at this point, you are all set